All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'll go ahead and call to order the December 17th, 2024 Pendleton Board of Zoning Appeals. I'll do a roll call, starting to my left.
My name is Robert Jones.
James King.
Kyle Acorn.
Jenny Sisson.
Rob Williams.
All right, we do have a quorum. Approval of minutes of previous meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve with minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. On to old business. V 10/15/2024-01 and 2024-02 findings of fact.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate everyone coming here tonight in support of the two new petitions, but we do have two petitions from our October BZA meeting. I'll kind of recap those as quickly as I can, and then we can go into vote on each one of those. The first one, the one regarding the variance of developmental standards on front yard setbacks for an accessory dwelling structure. This was regarding a petition filed by Michael and Krista Oliver, located at 141 East Madison Avenue. They are on your Google Drive as well. But this particular petition had requested for a setback off of Spring Street. This particular property was a double frontage property. And being in the RC zoning district, it required an average, meeting that average setback requirement for that block. So that being calculated came to 15 feet on both sides there, Spring Street, and they were asking for a 5 feet variance. This petition was deemed by your board not to be injurious to public health and safety. The setback was the same as the existing accessory structure that was going to be replaced with then the ADU. It was similar to nearby properties, and also Spring Street is deemed a local road, and it has very low traffic on that road. Several properties had less than 5 feet setback already with their existing primary and accessory structures, and that there was no further obstruction deemed to be placed on that roadway. The second criteria was the use and variance or value of the adjacent property. This particular petition was in line with the comprehensive plan, and that the ADU was allowed by right for this zoning district. The nearby properties had the same legal non-conforming setbacks as this particular petitioner's property. The ADU matched the existing home with architectural materials and so forth, and was going to meet all the UDO and ADU standards set forth by our Plan Commission. And also, just as an additional reference, is that there is some boundary pins for the property, and your board had asked that they adhere to those to make sure that those setbacks were followed. The third criteria was that the terms of the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would create a practical difficulty for this property owner. This petitioner actually, lives in the primary structure that was on the same lot as this ADU that they wanted to bring in. They wanted to enjoy the full benefit of that property while preserving the privacy also for their backyard as well, giving them about 30 feet distance. The surrounding area features historic parcels with unique lots, as your board had determined, and also that the strict application impacts that buildable area and the ability to make these desired improvements. The next criteria was that the variance was the minimum necessary. They were seeking the minimum necessary, again, being the same location as the existing structure, and that all their standards were met. And then the last criteria was that this variance request did not correct a hardship. This structure had not been purchased or created, constructed prior to the ruling of this board. As far as any response from the public, there was no objections or even feedback received from public. And then as far as conditions, the board did approve the petition as presented, adopted staff analysis as the basis for the findings of facts with two conditions. The first condition was, again, to reference and adhere to the boundary pins to assure that those setbacks were followed. And then also that any future enhancements to the property would remain in compliance with the impervious surface maximum, which is 50%. So this was the one particular parcel that had that river rock. Your board decided that you can't really require them not to replace that river rock, but they needed to stay within the confinements of the standard. So keeping to 50% or less, and they were far well under that. So that is a recap of that findings of facts for that petition.
Board discussion? Do we need a motion to adopt those? Okay, so if there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the findings of fact for B 1015-2024-0.
I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, on to the next one.
Thank you. The second variance that was presented in the October BZA meeting was a variance on signage square footage. This petition was filed regarding property at 200 Enterprise Drive. It was filed on behalf of Community Health Network by Jennifer Milliken on behalf of Ice Miller and Timothy Oakes there being the legal counsel for Ice Miller and the petitioner. This variance took place in the institutional zoning district, and what they were doing was they were seeking two sign variances. The first one was the total cumulative area allowed for combined sign facings. They were seeking to allow 275 square feet for this 25,000 square foot building versus the 125-foot standard. And then also there was two particular signs, one on the west elevation wall, one on the east elevation wall, that they asked for to exceed that 50 square foot max there. One at 93 and one at 96. First criteria was deemed that it was not injurious to public health and safety. In fact, actually, the signage for this particular type of land use for emergency services was deemed a direct correlation to public safety and well-being. That increased signage and visibility, the board felt that it enhanced that safety, for anyone coming in and out of that property, trying to find that property and for their patients. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property was deemed not to be impacted in a negative manner because it matched the nearby surrounding uses. There's a lot of mixed use and heavy uses, industrial uses within that area. And that even the variance was appropriate, even including the illumination of that sign there in front of the property. The strict application of the terms of the ordinance was deemed to could result in a practical difficulty if those strict terms were applied. This property has because of the constraints with a lot of utilities and bioswales and stormwater management, it had to sit way back far from the property. And then on the other side, it faces an I-69, so that enhanced visibility was deemed appropriate for that. To be able to give that desired visibility. And also then the next variance criteria was that it was a minimum necessary. They did request just what was considered minimal, and that it complemented the area, that it would sit well within that area once those signs were erected, and that it would meet all the other UDO standards. And then last criteria was that they did not create a hardship. Again, these signs were not produced, purchased, installed prior to the ruling of this board. And this particular variance was approved by the petition as presented, adopting staff analysis for the basis of the findings of facts with no conditions. Any questions on that one?
Questions?
Okay.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
So moved.
Wait a second.
A second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. New business.
Okay.
CU 1217-2024-01.
Okay, great. Okay, well, moving right along. Thank you. Stephanie, if you want to go ahead and pull up here, page 3. Yes. Okay, all right. So tonight we have petitioner Stonefield Engineering Design here. They are here on behalf of the developer, which is also going to be the landlord for this property if it does develop in this manner. The landlord and developer is Blue Peninsula. And they are here representing two petitions tonight. One is a conditional use, and the second one is a variance from developmental standards. Specifically, there are 6 variances that they're asking the board to consider tonight. The lead for this group is Reed Cooksey. He is here present. Him and his team actually come from Michigan. We met a couple weeks ago, or about last week. We walked through this petition. It was very productive and very helpful. So I appreciate his time going through this petition. He again is here with his team. We've got Connor here, and we also have Patrick on the engineering team. And then we also have with us Patrick Moon. He is the operator of then what would be the tenant, which would be Wawa for this particular site. And so thank you again for taking your time and your travels and coming here and being with us today. The petitioners comply with all the filing requirements, including the consent representation form. This particular property is not owned by the developer, the petitioner. It is owned by Willie Bowles, and so he did give his consent for them to represent him on this petition and bring this matter in front of the board. Also, public hearing notices and those requirements were all met. Also, the town had not received any feedback, whether positive, negative, in support or objecting to this petition, either one of those, the conditional use or the variance. So tonight we're going to go a little bit different order. We thought that it would be appropriate that the fact that this particular property is relative to the same property, we will go ahead and walk through the site details of this property. And then what we'll do from there is that I'm going to kind of give an introduction to the conditional use, what the petitioner is seeking, and then we'll move into the variance and those details and what they're seeking from the board to consider tonight. So then after that, then we will then allow Stonefield Engineering Design. They have put together a presentation for you. They would like to present to your board. So we're going to turn things over to them, allow them to expand or give any additional details and so forth. And then we will open up for questions, comments for both staff, Hannah Rose and myself, as well as the petitioner. And then from there, we will go ahead and open and close each one of the petitions, so to allow then any comments from the public. So we'll kind of walk you through that tonight, but as we then, before we go into staff analysis, then we'll open and close the public for each one of those. And then from there, then we will give our staff report, and then we'll turn it over to you for any other discussions and whatnot. Okay. So kind of starting out here for the site details for this particular property. It's located at 525 East State Street. The underlining zoning is general business, the GB. And this parcel is within the boundaries of the Corridor Overlay District. I know this is very new. This particular document, it's a companion document to our Unified Development Ordinance. It was just approved mid-October. So we're just starting to see this kind of come into play with our petitions. It applies to site development, platting, variances, and conditional uses. One thing I do want to go ahead and mention tonight, that a part of that document, it's not statute driven, by the fact that we are meeting the requirements of this document, particularly into the design review board. It's a piece of that document that has been incorporated into an extra layer of eyes and review. So with the timing, those assignments had not been able to take place prior to this petition. So we, as planning staff, we have come together as a subcommittee to our technical review committee. So we, as bodies of our planning department, met those criterias and reviewed those elements of that extra document against this petition tonight. So just kind of wanted to give that clarification. But that being said, about this property falling within the Corridor Overlay District, this property is approximately 3.8 acres of undeveloped land. It sits, as you can see, it's kind of a boomerang property. It's very unique. It touches there on East State Street to the north, and then it kind of wraps around to State Road 67 there to the southeast. And this particular property, again, it's undeveloped. The intent of the developer is to subdivide this parcel from the parent parcel. So there is altogether about like 3.8, but they want to reserve there. You'll see highlighted in yellow there to the north about 1.15 acres for future development. Then that retains then about 2.65 acres then to the southeast there for the proposed site, which this conditional use and variance then applies for just that particular property there. On this property though, in its entirety, you'll see on the next slide though, there are several constraints, several easements that this developer is having to kind of work around. The first one is that, I'm not for sure, grab this here. Got that. Right here off of East State Street, there is a utility easement and also an access, ingress, egress, access easement here. It is a part of this entire property, so this access easement is owned by this property owner. But again, this is already a set easement then for this future development, then also then a connectivity then to this southern portion of this land. Then there is, and Stephanie, if you want to go ahead and flip to the next page, kind of better illustrates here. There, right there, outlined in gray is the utility and road easement there. I think it's about 30 feet wide there. Then we also have the railroad easement, which is 45 feet. And that is on the western property line. Then here towards the center, we've got a 15-foot storm easement that is existing on the property. And then we also have yellow here outlined as another 20-foot utility easement and a storm ditch. Along this storm ditch, this utility easement houses our underground electric wire. There is a kind of a transformer box, I think right up here in between CVS and O'Reilly's. And then it kind of connects and gives power to CVS. Then it runs into then a conjunction box down here by the railroad. So I didn't mention this, but on the earlier slide there, O'Reilly's does sit here up to the north. CVS, which their LLC is SCP. And then we also have down here to the south is Sinclair Properties, which is a auto sales service there. So, okay. Here. So, for this particular property, we kind of wanted to point out these easements, but the developer is fully aware of all these easements and existing utilities. They understand if they need to replace those, and relocate those, they are ready to do so. And then also they will be working with Madison County Soil Water Conservation District, and then possibly even the Drainage Board if necessary with that ditch, to make sure that their stormwater management plan is good to go. So then as far as the conditional use up here at the top, the petitioner is seeking approval to then be able to operate a gas station within the corridor overlay boundaries in the underlying general business district. That is originally we required it was a permitted right to be able to have a gas station in general business, heavy business, light and heavy industrial. However, about a couple months ago, the UDO was amended by Plan Commission, and which incorporated those that use in those particular zoning districts to require a conditional use as well. So it's also now required conditional use, both from the UDO and also the corridor overlay. So that is why they are seeking this use, is to be able to have and operate a gas station. But I do want to make note, and I know that they're going to go into more detail with you tonight. It's also going to have a convenience store there, which is kind of a local grocery store. It's there's a deli, a lot of fresh foods that get made there on site and sold. So it's a little bit more than the standard gas service station. Okay, we go to the next page. So that is what they're asking for on a conditional use. The next petition that this petitioner has filed is seeking a variance from developmental standards in 6 different areas. So this first page here, you'll see that there's 4 listed. I isolated the 5th and 6th one because they're related to landscape and I want to provide their preliminary landscape plan. So that'll be on the next page though. Considering the fact that we have to review the comprehensive plan, the access management and control plan, the UDO, as well as then the new corridor overlay. There was a lot of planning documents for not only staff then to dive into with this petition, but then also for the developer. And to come out with 6 variances, I think they worked really hard to try to meet all the standards as outlined by the town of Pendleton. So the first one being the maximum front yard setback of approximately 210 feet compared to the maximum 40 feet. In our UDO, it outlines that setback requirement is based on the particular road classification. So here on their front here along State Road 67, it's a state street. So that is a primary arterial roadway. In the UDO, it requires a setback to be a minimum 75 feet. However, this area is within the boundaries of the corridor overlay, and the corridor overlay focuses on properties that are kind of in the main corridor of the town. It's kind of the gateway, the entryways of our town and our community. And there is a consensus with our plan commission, town council, to kind of create more of human scale up front, up close development along the roadway. But this being State Road 67 being a state street, also the fact that we've got some constraints within the property and uniqueness of the layout of this property, meeting the corridor overlay standard, which basically says a minimum of 10-foot setback, maximum of 40-foot setback. They took a lot of time and effort to try to re-engineer, redesign in a way to be able to see if they can flip-flop that canopy. It was one of the main questions. Is there a way that we can get that canopy off of State Street, put it more towards what would become the middle of that property and or sense of the back of the property, with that building being more up front? They really tried, the engineers, their full team really tried to tackle this, and every which way was running into roadblocks with circulation issues, with pedestrian safety issues, separation of traffic from those pedestrians. So this is the design that they have come to present. Again, it will have to go through site development review that will go through our planning department more in detail, but they did provide a lot of detail for this variance request. That being said, we also have the second variance that was requested was a location of the fuel pumps and the parking towards, the front of the property, the front of the building, which kind of places it in front of the property there off of the roadway, compared to the side or the rear of the primary building. This is a particular standard that is outlined in the corridor overlay standards. And this particular reason for that was for aesthetics and to enhance human scale, also pedestrian connectivity, and to improve kind of pedestrian experience. And it's not particularly reasons for safety issues. So I just kind of wanted to point that out though. But again, petitioner is going to kind of expand upon why those fuel pump alignments and parking in the front works best for their site and gives them a more safe layout. The third variance is 18 proposed front parking spaces compared to the 11 spaces permitted. This is about a 6,300 square foot facility. So it's based on the square footage of your structure. So here for the convenience store here in Delhi, it being 6,300 square feet, we divide that by 300. We come up then with a minimum parking spaces of 22 feet. So the standard of the UDO requires that 50% of that required minimum 22 spaces, that's the maximum that can be in the front of the property. And so in trying to accommodate spacing for those using the gas pumps, there's also a drive-through that is a pre-order for the deli, and also just for the convenience store and the local grocery produce that this particular establishment provides a community. They felt that additional parking was necessary. So they're providing about 50 spaces, but yet you'll see that maximum of 11 parking spaces, they would like and ask to be allowed 18. 18 also includes not only what's in the front, but you'll see a little bit on the side. So this is kind of similar to our Dollar Tree petition, where that maximum was being kind of breached and encroached upon then in the front, but yet some of them are kind of more the side front of that building. So, and then the fourth variance that they're requesting is to propose a driveway access point spacing at 44 feet. This is center line to center line. So our standards, and you'll see in the public hearing notice, there was a reference of 305 feet. That is how the petition was submitted. 305 feet is the NDOT standard. That is requirement for NDOT. And so, and that is from center line of a driveway cut to then the next center line of a driveway cut. We put that in there. They're asking us, if NDOT does approve this, they're asking us to then waive it. Our own requirements and standard is not 305 feet, but it's 300 feet. So we're not too far off on our standards there. But with this particular property, it neighbors here, again, like I said, CVS here up to the north, and then we have Sinclair property. Both of those particular properties have access points off of State Road 67. Then it was the hope and the intent of the developer to be able to reach an agreement, to be able to get a cross access agreement with one of those neighboring properties. So either CVS then to the north or Sinclair to the south. At this time, in the time of the petition, agreements have not been able to be reached to be able to have that cross access to the property. That would be ideal and preferred by the town of Pendleton, but the properties already exist. And so being the fact that agreements have not been able to be reached at this time, that is why this variance is being sought by the petitioner, to then place it then here about 45 feet away from then the east out lot, then access off of CVS. There was also some discussion and talking to Mr. Cooksey in this. He explained that if we shift that alignment for that proposed driveway cut, secondary driveway cut, we'll get into that a little bit later, moving that farther to the south to kind of maybe come in the middle of those type of things. What it's going to ultimately do is then create that traffic that comes right into the center of that fuel pump, pedestrians, and so forth. And then it also creates then a radius issue for the large trucks that then need to come in. So the reasons for having it lined up here on the north here was an engineering decision for the best alignment. That alignment gave for fuel trucks to be able to pull in straight here to then be able to unload then on the underground fuel tanks here. And then it also, isolates it from then the fuel and then the front pedestrian usage here to the facility. It gives then kind of an outside thoroughfare that kind of runs through the property, that if someone were then to then cut through from one property here, say for the future development and whatnot, it keeps them kind of out of the inner workings of the establishment there on the site. And then and then last here I wanted to bring out is that larger setback here is in use for trying to keep good traffic flow, as well as provide an area for stacking for traffic that are coming in and out from that public right of way. And then also I wanted to note that this is designed as a right in, right out. If you're not familiar, we have a US 36 project that is upcoming and letting here about 26, I think, February 26th, that they're going to put a median that's going to go from Angle Road all the way down to State Street. It's actually going to go on beyond that, but in front of this particular property, there's going to be a median that there will not be any left-hand turns, which will improve safety substantially in this area that is having a lot of traffic concerns. But the developer is fully aware of that. They've already designed and intended that to be just limited to a right in, right out access then off the 67. So. Then the last two, and Stephanie, you can go to the next page, is regarding landscaping. So for the fourth variance, they're asking is minimum landscape buffer at approximately 10 feet versus the 15-foot that's required for this particular zoning. So that is based out of the Unified Development Ordinance. It's same use, similar use for the adjoining properties as far as zoning. So it just requires that 15-foot buffer yard. They are only seeking it for a small portion of the property. So it's just right here. The standards can be met. The landscaping is just kind of a start, just to give an idea. So this again will go through site development review. The particular species, all of them look good except for the maples. We're going to have those taken off, but that will come at a later point. We will dig deeper into all the specific species and coverage, but they are meeting all the other landscape requirements, including the islands within the internal property being 7%. We also have the parking lot parameter buffer or landscaping that they're providing. Species count, they've committed to doing that. As you can see, they have already analyzed both the corridor overlay and the Unified Development Ordinance as far as breaking down of what is required and if it's met or not, if it's in compliance, and then what is needed to bring it into compliance. So they're agreeing to all of the landscape requirements except for these two. They're having some difficulty meeting. This particular one is because of the vent for the concrete vent pad there for the storage tanks for the gasoline. It bumps out and kind of, it requires a little bit more real estate to go into that buffer yard. So it's going to kick into about 5 feet. So it's going to shorten that buffer yard depth for about 7-8 feet, I believe, maybe long there in this area, and 5 feet deep where that standard could not be met. So that is the first variance that they're requesting for landscape. And then, and again, it's just isolated to just this area. And then the second one is they're asking for a full waiver of foundation plantings. For the foundation plantings, we have through our UDO and also our corridor overlay that requires plantings right up against the building of the primary structure. So that's sometimes like in the sidewalk, they kind of bump out the concrete, they put in some landscape mulch and so forth. And then there is a count that's required. So for every so many feet, they have to put in a shrub or ornamental tree. And so for this particular establishment, they have developments in Ohio, Pennsylvania, so they're kind of used to this Midwest corridor area and starting to develop here in the state of Indiana. They are experiencing issues with rodents and insects kind of invading in on their walls here for their food establishment. So what they are asking, they just made it as a practice to eliminate any foundation plantings. And so they're just asking for your consideration. The corridor overlay, what it requires is that for every 12 feet, then located within 10 feet from the building facade, then they have to provide this coverage. And then those plant beds within the corridor overlay actually has a width requirement. Our UDO doesn't, but in the corridor overlay, it does have 6 feet in width requirement for those those planting beds. So, so being that, they, you know, would not like to have the same experience with the Board of Health, that is why they're asking for that, particular, variance. So all those, that being said, kind of introducing the variance and the conditional use. If you have any questions for me initially, I'd be more than happy to answer. Or I can turn it over to the petitioner for their presentation.
Any questions for Chuck?
Yes, Mr.
Question on the, very good job on your presentation there. Appreciate that. On the, talking about on the changing on the 6736 there on the highway construction.
Mhm.
I assume a traffic study has been done that's going to traffic impact on, particularly when school is letting in and out at the
Yeah,
the afternoon session.
We've
That's it.
been working on this project with GenDOT since 18. So they've done all the background information and traffic studies and flow and, maintenance of traffic has also been established for when construction is occurring. And so through public hearings with GenDOT. So all those things have been considered with them as far as that goes. So they have modified some of those things, the medians based on the background research that came in and their studies. But for the most part, it's still completely intact from Angle to State Street and State Street to 36.
Okay. Is the town in agreement with that, comfortable with this, what NDOT is doing?
NDOT,
We don't, I mean, we've been, we were brought onto the project a little late in the game. So we were able to kind of piggyback the project on top of it, adding sidewalks, pedestrian connectivity that we can work with NDOT and getting installed construction dollar wise. But I mean, it's their road.
It's our town.
I know that Mr. Reski and Mrs. Urbanski have done a lot of work with the NDOT and the design engineer for that, trying to then be able to accommodate then the needs for the local businesses, as well as being able to, like Hannah Rose mentioned, they piggybacked a lot of pedestrian crosswalks and enhancing those, and also doing trails and the connectivity in the area, and lighting as well, having improvements there. So I think they were very responsive to us adding in those elements, and
There's also gonna be added travel lanes as well. That's where this project started, was them wanting to add travel lanes. Good traffic flow.
Right.
So.
second, if you want to go back a couple of screens there, I don't think I recall pointing out the one for the kind of the zoning, the colored area here. Just so you know, like Hannah Rose mentioned, it'll go from Angle Road all the way through then to the intersection here at 38 and 67. It'll continue on, then going on up to 36. But then right here, you're going to see that there's a little bit of change of ownership on the road. So this is East State Street up to about Central Way, and then it switches over to back to State Road 38, which is NDOT Road. So that median also was going to come in from the intersection down to Central Way. So it will not be existing here for this access to this northern access point to the property. As far as the median, that median will not go that far down. But they will have that to work with, and that is why that is designed as a right in, right out. Because this will be a full movement here on that.
And this is the intersection where they're adding not just crosswalks, but it had a different name that I had never heard of at the time. The
Kind of
special,
the
yes,
Hawk
the Hawk
system.
system.
That'll go further down, that would be. up
So
here.
is that
A Hawk
on
is a
38?
Alone kind of implement as far as I understand it. That'll be mid-block for the kids to cross over to like.
There by Wendy's.
area.
By Wendy's area.
So
Yes.
it's not crossing over 67 at
There will
all?
be crosswalks here, they just won't be what's called Hawk system as far as, it's just attached to the lights.
Okay.
It's not standby by itself. So there will be 4 crosswalks here eventually.
With timers, yeah.
Am I able to ask questions on Percent Clear Auto, about access and all that, at what point I can do it later if you want, but
We'll
Well,
open it up for
okay.
public, yes,
thank you,
okay.
thank you.
Any other
Okay.
questions, Kristen?
So, Bob, I don't really have a good answer, to be honest with you. This is a project I inherited when I started here.
Right.
And it appears to be what it is.
I guess and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm looking, I can see where the state would be supportive of this project development, and I have as well. But I guess I kind of wonder, for lack of better words, the benefit to the town, as you, that's probably not our issue with the BZA, I suppose, at this point in time, so I probably should rest my case, I guess.
But I'm happy to chat with you later on if
Yeah.
we do that.
I just have some concerns.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
Probably 20 years ago when CVS developed, I could have sworn there was cross-access requirements on their Board of Zoning Appeals action.
Not that we are aware
For
of.
CVS to share.
to
cross-
share.
To share access with food.
To any future development
Yeah,
here.
properties on both sides.
Yeah, from what I've been advised, it was a quick, hard no. There was not an acceptance to reconfigure this to share that
Correct.
with them.
Right. in
Yes.
this day and age.
Yeah.
But as far as something from a long ago, I'm not aware of anything.
I think it might be worth digging in if we have this, because I would swear it was part of some of the action they had.
Yeah. We
Uh,
can definitely let
okay.
you know about what year we might start with.
I would guess 2004.
Okay.
something like
Okay.
that.
And
And
we
it's,
can look in all our archives and see what, or, you know, the county, if they have some sort of recorded access easement. I know some other properties that are a little older, do have those reported at the county. They're described where the access is supposed to go.
Then there was an attempt later, and I'm sure Willie will have the better historian on this than I am, to develop this area. There was a developer that was trying to develop this proposed property. And in fact, it might have gone through at least a preliminary plat back in around that same time period, 2004, 2005, and I just wondered what happened. But I mean, it went away, and I think it went away when everything else went away, when the mortgage crisis hit, like
Mhm.
all development stops. But I would also swear there was a developer, and there was an attempt at least, or a talk of building a multi-use tenant building on that site. So I don't know if any of that still exists out there anywhere in either.
We'll dig deep.
If I may, that I bought the property in 92. And what you're talking about, 2004, 5 in there, that was when I developed and CVS was listed as the #1 tenant. And then there was other lots along the front there where, the auto parts store is, but no one ever talked about building any other buildings or developments. No.
All right.
just, I want to piggyback on that, regarding the CVS entrance. They have 3 lanes because they do have a left and right.
Yeah. And an enter.
So it's wider than,
Well, we probably.
yeah, and it will need to change at some point, obviously, when the median comes in. So depending on what you find,
Mhm.
that could factor in just because of the size.
Yeah, I haven't talked with them as far as, you know, how they would wanna just restripe it to be an in out or put a pork chop. You know, and it's something like that, just because we haven't gotten to construction phase yet. That's probably where we discuss when someone's on site, what they wanna do. But I suppose they could just have, split it in half. But I don't think that I don't think they'll make it, smaller. Or condense it, and I don't think we have a mechanism to make them do it.
But yeah, we'll definitely look at the record to see if there was, we were not aware of any previous requirement, you know, with this particular site. But
So with the plantings, is there an alternative suggestion like, I don't know, arborvitae's and gigantic pots or something that's,
Yeah.
some, just to add that greenery to break up the
Yes.
concrete.
That can definitely be a condition of the variance is to have some type of alternate, you know, green plantings there,
'Cause it's
just
not
to
touching
improve
the
that
building.
aesthetics. It's
It's-
not, yes. So if
it's not
that's
in the
something
ground.
that would work for the petitioner and that condition that they can take, that's definitely a great point. Yeah. Mhm.
There's still gonna be a 10 foot buffer versus the 15. That's what, they're not proposing elimination of the buffer, just a reduction.
Well, she was speaking about the
planning,
foundation.
Oh,
plan.
the foundation. Oh, I thought you were
foundation.
talking about
Yes,
these over
yes.
here.
Oh,
Sorry.
no,
Yeah.
these,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
just to help, it's an aesthetic.
Aesthetics, yes, and
a
that's the
visual.
reason for the ask, for the standard, so, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
So we'll do the
Then-
petitioner and then we'll open the public.
Yes, yes, and we'll do one by one, yes,
Okay.
that's it.
right.
Right. Yep, okay, yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick O'Leary. I'm the president of Blue Peninsula Real Estate. We are the developer. I've been developing for Wawa for 15 years. And so we are out of Metro Detroit, but I would say I got the longest commute in America because most of the business we've done in the last 12 years has been in Florida. But we've been developing for Wawa down there for a long time. And I guess first I wanted to kind of start with, have any of you been to a Wawa? Are you familiar with the brand? That's good. It's helpful because Wawa is absolutely not your typical gas station. And I'm going to drive that home a little bit as I go through Wawa and who they are and how they do business. So if you get tired of me saying that, you'll forgive me. Can I go back up to the elevation if I may? Okay, so this is our Midwest prototype. It's, and I think it's nice to point out that, is a very different prototype in Florida, which is much more fitting for Florida architecture. Here, they brought in, really excellent use of stone, brick, wood, natural materials. It's 4 sides of architecture. All sides are designed. They have breaking of massing, change of materials. So when you're looking at this building, and if you have, the strictest architectural guidelines, this pretty much sails through without any, without any issues, and very well thought up front. I want to address the foundation plannings because you'll see in this elevation, the planter boxes that they use to still soften up the elevation of the building without having to put that dirt and, kind of attractive pest home right up against the building. And those are very, very nice. We've used them for years in the mid-Atlantic and in Florida. So I did want to point that out. One other point before I jump into the presentation, in addition to what the state's done, we, and I'm not sure if it's complete yet, if we finished our traffic study.
We have not submitted, but
So we have our own traffic study that will go through all the details of the entrances and the exits, how many are coming in, the crossover between State Street and State Road 67, that I think is going to add or is going to benefit the intersection where people may turn off into Wawa or O'Reilly, grab what they need, and then exit back on 67, alleviating some pressure on the interstate. Keep doing this because I thought with my hands, so I'll move it. Okay. Wawa is a very interesting company. I mean, their history is incredible. They go back 200 years, and it really was the founder was the son of a wealthy industrialist out of Philadelphia who wanted to be a gentleman farmer, and he bought a dairy farm outside of Philadelphia. And he was an excellent businessman, and the dairy farm turned into be the Milkmen of Philadelphia, and the Milkmen of Philadelphia turned into the dairy stores. The dairy store turned into a market, and Wawa added gas about 30 years ago. But the strength of Wawa's offering, what makes them so outstanding and exceptional, different than any other gas station really in the entire country, is that history of being a market and the food preparation very, very much ingrained in who they were first, adding gas secondarily. And that's, Wawa, it's fresh made food. When you order a sub, they make it for you right there. When you get a breakfast burrito, they make it for you. This stuff isn't, preheated, prepackaged. Now they do have some of that at the checkout, but Wawa's offering is fresh food made for you on demand. And it's outstanding too, by the way. And a little bit about Wawa's success, just to put it in perspective, Wawa will do the sales of a McDonald's on the restaurant side. They'll sell as much coffee as a Starbucks. And they'll also do, double the gas of a typical, Speedway or gas station here. And that's because they do each one of the things they do very, very well. It really is not your typical kind of gas convenience store. So this is a little history, and I don't know how to start this. Do I? There you go.
It might not have sound.
Tested it earlier. I'll put it.
We did.
Gentleman said to push it to
this
this
Then-
device, I'm not sure.
Or the TV, or the TV, he said. Okay,
Soup's tech savvy on that. We've never had noise come out.
it's so much better with sound, but it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. But this is it gives you a little bit of that history that I think I touched on and.
Yeah, it's all the way up. But yeah. Tesla charger?
All of them are built for it, and they actually add the chargers when there's enough cars in the market to justify it, but it's, they're in as soon as the demand's there, so,
Wow.
every store. So, Wawa has a very unusual connection with their customers, and it truly is a love affair. So, the one on the left is just funny. This was a guy from the Mid-Atlantic states who was very excited of Wawa coming to Florida. A Wawa tattoo, you can Google it, is a very, very popular thing, especially for young kids. So if you can imagine putting the name of your favorite gas station tattooed on your arm, I can't either, but they do it. And then there are weddings multiple times every year at Wawa's, because it really is a community store. People meet there, they'll order coffee, and they end up getting married. So those things all happen. Again, not your typical gas station. So I like to point this out because this was not a parade for the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl. This is the opening of a Wawa store in downtown Philadelphia. That's the crowd of people that came out for that grand opening. Again, it's not typical. You don't create that kind of connection with your customers, by accident. It's by doing things very, very well. And we touched on those here. So there is a deep emotional connection with their customers. I can't explain it, honestly. I've just seen it happen. The brand just, it brings people in and they love it. young kids especially, high school age, college age, they go nuts for Wawa. It's a privately owned company. It's an ESOP, so it's employee stock ownership company, which we'll talk more about in a moment. They're an unbelievable organization to work for and work with. I've been a partner with Wawa, like I said, for 15 years, and I feel absolutely blessed to have the opportunity to work with them. They're good people. And you'll see that in their charitable donations. In 10 years, they've donated $150 million to charities, and they do it locally. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then they're very forward thinking. The EV chargers is just one example of that. So I can talk about their benefits and careers, not jobs, but the top of that says it all. The average Wawa employee is 7 years. The industry average is 7 months. I mean, it tells you what they do and how they do it is just radically different. They have tuition reimbursement, incredible medical benefits, retirement contribution, the ESOP participation, and life and disability insurance that are available to their employees. So the ESOP is, it makes store managers millionaires when they retire, because what the Wood family did is, as the growth of the company gets bigger, the Woods percentage of the pie gets smaller. They give more to the employees, but everyone's doing better because the overall company's growing. It's not a completely unusual structure, but you don't see it a lot. Publix is another giant ESOP, if you're familiar with them in Florida, big grocer. But it's a pretty incredible program, and it makes the employees stakeholders. I mean, true stakeholders in the company. So the Wawa Foundation, I mentioned before, $150 million in 10 years. 30 million meals donated, and they give them to their local charities. 7 national partners, and then they have thousands of local donations. So Pendleton can go into, I'm making it up, the marching band has an opportunity to go to Detroit. They can go to Ford Field to play, and they're looking for money. They can walk into the local store and request that from a manager. The manager will submit it, and it's not automatic, but it does go through a process, and that's the kind of thing that gets approved. They become part of the community, and they give back to the community time and again. And then, this is just pretty cool because it's a hot thing. Every single Wawa is built with EV charging infrastructure, which is very expensive. And it's a commitment they made really several years ago. It isn't even that recent. And so as the transition, more and more people transition to electric vehicles, Wawa is ready and set. All they got to do is put in the chargers, and they have them. And when you stop and think about it, their offering's ideal for EV charging, right? They have great food, great things that while you're charging, you can grab a sandwich, grab a coffee, while the car's charging. So it fits very well with their business model. They also have a long list of environmentally conscious, construction practices that exceed what they're required to do. But again, they just do things right. And that is the end of my talking about Wawa. We're happy to, if you want to dive back into the specifics of the site, any questions you have, we're here, my team, to answer any questions. Or I have any questions you have right now, I'm happy to answer as well.
I have a couple questions, but let me take a sip of water, and I apologize.
Yeah, more cough drops.
Mm.
6 seasons.
I am not contagious, I promise. It's allergy. With the charging stations, do you have any that are already converted?
Oh, yeah, there's several in Florida.
How do you power those? Do you
Uh,
have? Are you switching some of that with some power, or are you just pulling?
Like off the grid.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious because with the forward thinking, just,
Yep.
I'm thinking of the load in the
Yeah.
area in the
Yeah, my
future.
name is Patrick Moon. I'm with Wawa. I live here in Indianapolis. Your question is basically, we partner with Tesla and a couple of EV charging companies. They have to install their own infrastructure. They'll have to work with the electric company for a new transformer or, generate more power where the transformers work. So that there's a dedicated transformer just for the chargers that go in. Right now, we're the largest Tesla charger provider in the country. I think we have 155 stores that have Tesla superchargers on them. So we work with them on a regular basis, and I've actually just looked at a couple of sites here recently in the Indianapolis market where they're looking to maybe put equipment. But, they work with what we've already had. We've already got this parking space. You go back to the site plan, we can show you which spaces we dedicate, if they want to come in, which would be EV chargers, but we work with them from the very beginning. It's not something that's an afterthought. So it is something that we think out upfront. So not sure if that really answered your question, but it is a separate dedicated transformer that would be for their use.
That part does, yes.
Yeah.
I have additional questions. I don't know which person would be the right person.
I'm done with questions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It goes back just to the slide of what you represent, your background, being for the people, your deep history. And it really, this is a great picture to ease into what I'm gonna talk about. We have the historic district overlay for a reason. You're in a historic building. It's all along here, and that's what defines our town. I've seen different pictures here, and I've been to Wawa's before, and I have seen different ones, so they are not all the same layout and look. Has there been any discussion or thought on how you can blend in with our community? Because we are one of 2 historic towns in the entire state of Indiana, like our original boundaries. And that is something we've worked hard to preserve. I know every building, when you drive by, you're not gonna see that. But those are things we've been working hard as growth has hit our area, because that's what makes us unique. That's why people want to live here. It has a different feel to it. So my thought is, I don't want to be anywhere USA. So nice building, nice materials, but it's the same one you see in every town. So do you make those accommodations to be part of the community?
If there's architectural requirements, certainly we'll have to adapt to those, whatever they are. But if there are certain requirements or certain things you're looking for, I need to know what they are so we can work with the architects and get, see if we can work towards that goal. We've got a couple buildings that, they required all brick. We accommodate as much as we can. There are certain structural requirements where the roof load goes. We couldn't put brick in certain areas,
Mhm.
but we'll accommodate as much as we can, to make it as long as structurally sound. And if there's architectural requirements that you have and your overlay district requirements, we'll certainly meet those requirements as well.
You showed some great historic photos, so I just felt like that.
Yeah.
I know we're not getting into design, but I feel like it's a time to open some of those thoughts and plant the seed.
No, we're happy to take a look at those requirements and see if we can make those work as best we can. This building, which right here, as Patrick alluded to, was designed specifically for the Midwest market. That's why it looks different from what's down in Florida. If you've been down in Florida, they're slightly smaller buildings. This one, because of where we're at and what we're trying to do, it's more open on the inside. It provides the services a little bit differently. We looked at the flow and how the different uses will work together. So that's why the building is now 6,300 square feet. As opposed to, I think down there like 4,500 maybe. So the building, it constantly evolves. So, this time next year, I might be looking at 6,700 square foot building, who knows? But, we will take those requirements and consider into consideration, and try to meet those needs as best we can. We're not gonna just say no.
And if I could add, my conversation with Mr. Cooksey, we talked about that and about the corridor overlay and about all the elements of architectural requirements and those additional material requirements for the corridor overlay. So he said that he was, aware of those, that they had educated themselves and reviewed those, and that he understood that if they get into the design and they feel like some of these requirements cannot be met, it's gonna have to prompt a new variance request, and they would not be able to help it. So, but he felt like that everything else.
And a good example is just even how the Ring building for bagels,
So,
Sophie's.
Sophie's Bake.
that historic top, you know, it doesn't take much modification to do some of that. Thank you.
Any questions for the commission?
I have a question. Do you have any lead buildings, lead certified buildings? From all the green infrastructure you've got?
Green infrastructure on the roof.
I mean, like any lead.
Most of the lead
silver?
requirements for mechanical and, you know, walls and how the thing is put together, that's incorporated, but we do not have any green roofs, because we have. They're also, you can see it's a sloped roof, but you can't do a green roof.
That's fine, that's the list of all the different. Sort of all the different.
Yeah, that's a very extensive, good list. I mean,
I saw them in there somewhere. That might be on a different slide.
I was just curious. Sorry.
But you can see everything, it's all, energy efficient, you know, Energy Star appliances, low water consumption, fixtures, so. We incorporate as much as we can, but we just can't do the green roof because the architecture that we're trying to accomplish, and it's, you know, it's kind of our prototype, and we're trying to, so
Sure,
people drive down, they know it's us.
sure.
Right, so you said, I think there was a mention that an effort was made to flip the site to put the building in the
There
front.
was, yes, there
And
was
that-
kind of design when agreement couldn't reach with cross access, they kind of reconfigured, and yes, all of it.
Yeah, again, I'm Reed Cooksey with Stonefield Engineering Design. So yeah, to put a little bit more color on that, you know, obviously we have a very unique site. It's a boomerang site, I guess, if you will, but the frontage that we actually have on the road there is only 172 feet, and prototypically, you know, if you take even the parking out on the sides, we need over 200 feet for drive aisle, building, stacking, things of that nature. So you know, we have to shift it to a part of the site that can accommodate that. And then in order to move the canopy over to the side, it adds another 80 feet because the canopy is 56 feet and we need another drive aisle over there. So we just physically do not have the width to accommodate the request. So you know, unfortunately, you know, we did, like we said, we've looked at different configurations. We looked at, you know, narrowing some drive aisles. Again, 30 feet is as narrow as we can go to facilitate truck turning and safety with getting in and out of the pumps, things of that nature. So we did look at that, and just it's not feasible with kind of the shape of the site with the easements that the site has, things of that nature. So
Do you have a picture of what the canopies look like? Like a typical canopy? That's what we're gonna see from the street.
No, I do a couple of years. You go wrong. So.
there we go. Yeah, so in similar nature to the building itself, you know, we do use stone elements with the canopies. So again, an enhanced look over most convenience store gas stations, if you will. You'll notice the branding and everything, but the red isn't super in your face. And again, we have a lot of stone elements like that to complement the building itself.
Had a quick question, it might be for the Wawa guy from Indianapolis. How many lanes are designed on this one? Gas lanes,
It's 2 rows of 4, right?
2 rows.
2 rows of 4.
2 rows, 4. And so how many total pumps is that?
It's 8 pumps, 16 fueling positions.
Okay. Are there any Wawas across the country that were, I mean, smaller piece of property, you had to build a store smaller, fewer lanes, fewer pumps? Just kind of a smaller footprint, is that done?
We only have one footprint for the Midwest.
Yeah.
It's the only footprint we have. We
It's
have
not
looked,
Buc-ee's.
no, not 50,000 square feet, no. So, but no, it's a standard footprint we're using for all our sites in the Midwest.
That answered my question, I appreciate it, thanks.
I guess we want to proceed with the public hearing then, or?
Yes, the, Mr.
First.
Chair, spoke with the legal counsel. We're gonna kind of reorder this just a little bit. If we can start, I will, start with my staff analysis for the conditional use.
Okay,
Then we'd like for you to then open it up for open the public hearing for public comment, then close that. And then from there, then I will give my staff analysis for the variance.
Okay.
And then again, open up for public hearing, comment, close that, and then we'll move into a vote on each of them separately.
Okay.
And then if, say even on the variances, there's 6 of them. If you want to kind of talk them through, collectively, but if you need to isolate and kind of separate some of those out, you can do that as well.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Stephanie, sorry, no, we're getting, you're good. You're good. I will pause
Sharing
and,
one, sharing
Yeah.
other.
yes.
It's not just easy as clicking and down. So
I know.
There. Yep, you're at conditional use.
Okay, yes,
analysis?
yep, you
Okay.
got it, you're perfect, yep. So the function of the planning staff is to analyze the petition against the approved relevant plans and ordinances. Like I mentioned earlier, was the access management control, the comprehensive plan, the unified development ordinance, and then also the corridor overlay, which is a addendum to our UDO. So as well as any existing conditions or variances placed upon the site, to present facts and analysis, and based on the analysis, staff have the following comments to make to your board. Conditional use, we felt the conditional use, which is the conditional use of a gas station, would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of our community. The proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan outlines this particular parcel as planned business. That's going to go through a modification, so that terminology is probably going to change here in 2025. However, the use of that particular land and how it was seen most fit to be utilized is consistent with that comprehensive plan. And it reflects the existing development within the surrounding area. The site was designed for pedestrian safety and connectivity. That was the forefront of their mind as they went to design this property, as well as safe traffic and circulation and alignment. That is for vehicular traffic on the site, that is for the truck traffic, as well as not only on that site, but then also entering and exiting off that public right of way. The subject property provides adequate public utilities to accommodate these new services that are being proposed, and developer will be addressing any utility relocation and stormwater management needs as necessary. The property is to utilize existing shared drive along that East State Street, and then there to the southeast, they would then access the public right of way they're proposing as a secondary drive limited to a right in, right out. This secondary access may be allowed per the access management and control ordinance, but it is contingent upon a traffic impact study. At the time of my discussion, that impact study was not complete. So I'm glad to hear that that is now complete. It's been submitted to NDOT. We would like to have a request and have that on file now that that is done. But that would just need to support when we go into site development for that secondary access. It also is subject to planning department approvals, and including with that State Road 67 before we can permit, we'll also need to have a permit approved by NDOT as well. This gas station and convenience store is a permitted use in the general business zoning district, subject to or upon the conditional request by your board. That is an element or requirement for conditional use to be approved. And that is outlined and set forth by the UDO and its companion document, which is that corridor overlay document. And just wanted to kind of bring to your attention, it's a new document that we're starting to flex that corridor overlay, but the purpose and intent of that corridor overlay is to enhance the physical appearance and also the functionality and its aspects of the main corridors. You'll see down below, you'll see the 6 criterias that after we open and close public hearing for public comment, these are the 6 criteria that you would take into consideration when you consider this request. So that being said, I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Chairman, and open it up for public.
Yeah, so it's 8:15. I'll open the public hearing for C 10/17/2024-01.
Oh, that is a mistake. That is a typo. Please make it on the record. It's 12/17.
Oh, okay.
2024-01. I apologize.
No, you're
That
fine.
was from the
I'll-
appropriate.
8:15, I'll open the public hearing for
Not
CU
yet.
12/17/2024-01.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online?
No hands up, no.
Anybody present wishing to speak?
Okay, so,
You can come up to the
All
podium,
right.
please.
all right. So just a couple of questions, because I'm just getting involved in this, but I
Yeah,
have
state
to.
your name.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm Mike Levin. I'm a real estate broker. And I was involved in the zoning when, St. Clair went in the beginning. So I help him with his real estate needs.
Okay.
So, and I'm not a zoning attorney or variance attorney. So question is, on State Road 67, because it will impact St. Clair, are there gonna be like 2 access points on 67? No, it's right in, right out. But you have trucks coming in on the north side of it. And then I would imagine the cars are probably not going to be using the truck entrance, right? They're gonna go down a little bit to access the pumps, or do you know how that's
Can you
going?
pull up a site?
Proposal, how you want that to work? I'm just concerned about 67.
There's one access on 67.
So right where the trucks would enter in to go to the truck pumps, is that where it's gonna be? Like halfway between CVS and St. Clair, you think?
Which trucks?
I thought the north pump was for the trucks to get gas, right?
There's no truck pump, no diesel.
Okay, I misunderstood
It's for
that.
gas delivery.
It's just gas
Fuel
delivery.
to
Gas
fill the
delivery.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
that's where they will unload into the 3 tanks. I'm assuming that's. the
And
tanks that
where
are
would,
underground here.
where's proposed access going to be on your property on 67?
Closest to CVS.
Okay, so it's gonna be on the north end. Okay,
Ish, yeah.
Is that, I mean, that helps to accommodate a future potential shared access with CVS, I guess, and it separates the pedestrians.
so what's the chance of CVS doing share, cross access with Wawa?
They told us they will not entertain it. I guess if it was in a motion 20+ years ago, they wouldn't really have rights to it, but from what we've seen, we pulled title. There's no entitlements granting us access to their.
So you can't force it to do. So what happens if St. Clair was interested in doing cross access? Would it work or not work?
Well, we.
You designed it, you didn't, yeah.
Yeah, but so we.
You didn't think St. Clair was interested, right?
Yeah, so.
So you designed it differently because the thoroughfares on, that's going through your properties on the north end. So it really wouldn't work well if you put it on the south end, the access, unless you redesigned, right?
Well, yeah, we had a design that we had talked to Rick about at one time, and it didn't, I don't know, words and stuff, but it didn't seem of interest at the time. And so,
Well, now he's consulting with me, so we're just talking about it, so I didn't know if that's, is that a possibility or is that out now since you've spent all the money on design? Or all the time?
it's hard to backtrack, but.
Right.
You know,
I get it.
we're not trying to lock anyone out. We think cross access is good. I don't know if the shared access makes a lot of sense at this point. But, you know, it's. We remain open, it's not, it looks good.
So what do you think the difference is between cross access and shared access? In other words, it would just be one entryway, right in, right out onto 67. You'd both be using the same entryway, right? If you had cross access.
So shared access would be a single point of access that would split off into the Wawa and St. Clair.
So you're thinking side by side with the cross access.
No, so that's shared access, but my.
Okay, okay,
Cross access would just mean that there would be interconnectivity between, similar to what O'Reilly's has, for instance, they have access to the drive aisle. That would take them out to State Street, or they could come back down to 67, so cross-access just means that there's an interconnectivity between the users.
Oh, and is that what you had, approached, St. Clair? That was a
No,
cross
at the time, we had talked to him about a shared access.
And with the shared access, would he have, would the thoroughfare been on the south side and go straight out to State Street so that you would have cross access and shared access or no?
Words are making this hard, so it's probably gotta go back to the site.
Drawing
plan we
board.
had. But we had, the site plan that we had, originally presented to Mr. Sinclair and talking about was, access that was, entirely on his property. And then Wawa they kind of split off, if you will, on the two, pointer kind of thing. Like maybe help everyone understand it, does the black, this where is the
yellow.
okay.
There you go.
So what it was coming down and the config,
I'll go up to the map, you might have more room on it.
the configuration was a little bit different in the drive aisles, but so it was coming down. It was angling.
Sure. Now, it's the sixth. All right, there you go.
It was angling down here for Wawa, and then the Sinclair was really fairly close to what it is here. So, but we really designed completely different from that as far as the way the angles and the access, the roads, the
Well, yeah, it's completely different, I think, than the original, than what he had originally had thought. And the problem would have been is that, you guys could have entered in, but then he wouldn't have, I mean, if it could have been like, the street used to come in right next to Riley's, they start the street right there. If that just continued on to the St. Clair Auto Street, right along the other side of your property, that was not the way you designed it, correct?
We would not have the room to design though.
Okay, so it just wouldn't have worked that way.
No.
Because if anybody was at St. Clair Auto and they wanted to go out to State Street, it would be very hard to be zigzagging through a parking lot to get out.
no.
Okay.
They would easily have been.
It just wouldn't have been a straight shot, and you would have been able to go around the building fairly easily.
Well, any thoughts?
I only have one concern. Is the three entrances so close together.
Right, CVS and
Yeah.
Wawa and St.
I
Clair.
was standing out on my deck today at the lot and looked at, and that traffic, I think it's too much. For 3 entrances so close.
And that's why I was
So
trying
that's
to
my opinion.
brainstorm and come up with a solution, but yeah, I agree. I mean, Wawa's nice, but that would be the only.
Well, I mean, they're entitled to a cut onto 67 because it's their only point of access.
Okay,
So it has to go somewhere. And if that's the best spot for it, we have to kind of accommodate that, especially if this parcel is parceled off. You know, and the traffic study, I'm sure, will also reflect that having a single entrance on State Street isn't sufficient for flow. But if access is to be granted on 67, it has to be in the best place possible. And if that's where it has to go,
so with all this going in, my advice would have been is that.
I would
you
have
guys
loved
could-
to have a shared driveway with Sinclair and
Yeah.
CVS and have one master driveway for everybody. But if all parties don't want to play that way, we can't make anybody. do it.
Right.
We can only control what happens on this.
Well,
side.
we're late in the game, because I'm getting involved now, but I think it would have been,
Yeah.
would work better for everyone, with the shared access with St.
Sure,
Clair Auto
absolutely.
properties.
Yeah.
So that was my, only suggestion.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand your point. 3 in a row there is a little unnerving with the amount of traffic that already exists and the traffic that, you know, will likely come when this site develops. I think our saving grace here is that these will all be right in, right outs eventually. NDOT is adding a travel lane here, which means they will have hopefully blisters of some sort that will, you know, taper off to enter the structures as right in, right out, so that people will have a decel lane to prevent bumper to bumper, you know, collisions with people slowing down and turning right. But again, I'd have to go back and look at the plans. I'm sure it's in there.
Yeah, I can imagine, because right now traffic's coming, south on 67.
Mhm.
And then as soon as it stops, then you probably have some cars that may lined up in Wawa that are gonna start be turning right again, so you have to.
Right,
And they'll be
right.
just northeast, so have to wait till they clear to
Right.
get out. So it
So
could be a little
with
bit.
that additional lane, I mean, an additional lane usually kind of inherently means it's a passing blister. If someone's turning left, you go around into the other lane, so. And you know, it's not like NDOT to not have something like a small decel lane, but if they don't, at least it'll have that you can go around to the left southbound, somebody that's slowing down to turn right into one of these businesses.
Yeah, and they're definitely gonna have a median there with no cuts.
Correct.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Now, as you go north of State Street, are they gonna have a cut up there?
No, it'll have a median again from the other side of State Street to right about at 36,
Okay,
and then it stops.
okay. All right, well, that was my input, or our input, I think. Thank you.
And if the petition, if the variance does get approved tonight, it doesn't mean that things cannot get redesigned if the
Sure.
street is reached. So
As long as they fit the code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're not bound by this design at that variance.
All right, any other public comments? Nobody's online? All right, I will, 8:25. I'll close the public hearing for C 1217-2024-01. We'll move on to staff analysis of the variances.
Correct. So for the variance from developmental standards, again, we have 6 that was presented this evening. The function of the planning staff is to analyze the petition against the approved and relevant plans and ordinances, as well as any existing conditions and or variances placed upon this site to present facts and analysis. And based on that analysis, we have the following comments to make. The variances, one of those was not deemed to pose an endangerment on public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. The subject property is uniquely shaped with utility easement constraints and limited layout capabilities that they had to kind of work within. And the proposed front setback, we kind of want to make a comment on that it does match setback of the surrounding areas. Each of those facilities there sit back off the road, I'd say 85 to 100 feet in average. As well as it allows for improved site functionality. Particularly at site layout, including the location of that fuel canopy and design or designated parking spaces. And again, it allows for that safe circulation with that driveway access point placement as proposed. It was designed intentionally to prevent site congestion as well as pedestrian safety concerns. Back to the foundation planting variance as being sought. It was for the sole purpose to eliminate potential risk of insect and rodent issues for that 6,300 square foot convenience store, which specializes in deli style food and local grocery products and produce. Petitioner is seeking the minimum necessary for that landscape buffer. It is limited just to that short strip, 7 feet, 5 feet deep, there north of the concrete vent pad only. And I know we talked a lot about the shared access, which it is strongly encouraged by the Access Management and Control Ordinance. The goal of shared access is to preserve traffic flow and minimize the traffic conflicts, the evening comments that were made tonight. In fact, the corridor overlay does stress that streets are to align and connect where possible with existing or planned streets and provide that connection to adjacent properties. However, like planning director mentioned, agreements have not been able to be reached for this particular parcel. And so that is why the petitioner is seeking to be able to have that access where they are proposing their office State Road 67. And last, as you can see from the tables and in your Google Drive, there's additional documents that were, I would say, a very thorough site development. Again, it's not a complete review. We'll do that later phases if these variances are approved and those petitions for the site development review is filed. But in their analysis and the review, they really identified all the different zoning ordinances, landscaping, lighting, material, orientation, even the canopy matching then the primary structure. So they really got into our planning documents in great detail and expect that all of their standards will be met. Both the UDO and the corridor overlay. And if they find later in design that we find that there is something that cannot be accommodated, they will have to come in front of this board to ask and seek for additional variances. No, we will then, we want to open up for public hearing and we'll proceed like we did for the conditional use.
I have one comment I need to update on the record.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that, I said you could have an access point on 67 because it's, you're allowed to, if
Oh.
your traffic study proves that
Yes.
you need it. Would like to make that correction, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that it does.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
cross that question off.
Thank you. Yes, I was like, well,
Yeah.
I'm assuming what this traffic study says, but it's
We've
gonna
had a
say.
slight amount of experience with that. here
Yes,
lately.
yes, I
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
All right, we'll go ahead and open the public. It's 8:30. We'll open the public hearing for V 12/17/2024-02. Anyone online? Anyone present wishing to speak on the variance petition? Okay. Seeing none. 8:30 PM, we will close the public hearing for V 12/17/2024-02. All right. Questions for staff or petitioner?
One thing I did not mention earlier, and maybe it's the size of these rendering. I don't see any sidewalk out there, and I know on the CVS side there is.
Yeah, I mean, that would happen in site plan review. It might not be reflected
And
here,
I
but it's a
couldn't tell.
requirement.
There
It
is
is-
some,
there is.
If
that was a
okay.
conduit we worked with,
Yeah.
staff on before we submitted. We
Okay.
have, we are connecting the sidewalk to CVS as well as providing pedestrian access from, the convenience store through the canopies, to the sidewalk. It's one of, Wawa standards is ADA compliancy for all those pedestrian access points. So part of our plan, we submit for, final permits, we'll have an ADA plan that shows that path being compliant under the canopies along all the sidewalks by the buildings through the, to the right of way.
Is that even the ADA throughout your building as far as getting in and?
Yeah, so all around the, actual envelope of the building, all those parking spaces will be compliant. There'll be a compliant pathway from the building to the gas canopies as well as from the gas canopies to the right of way, as well as compliancy for, the air pump, for your tires, as well as dumpster enclosure pathway, things like that. It's pretty comprehensive, plan set.
It was just hard to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
It is there, it's in these boxes here. This is that path that he's talking about that's gonna connect into the trail system along 67.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just right on the property line there because as it was mentioned, 67 is being widened, so there's gonna be some additional taking of that green space.
Yeah, they have outlined all that, those commitments in their drawings.
So I guess timing of, like, thinking of coordination with the NDOT project, how soon?
We're
could
gonna
this
have,
be
we will most likely be ahead of them, from what I'm
Yeah,
being
you will.
told, but we've actually had this happen on a couple projects in the area where we will get their widening plans and make sure that we have a phasing of it where, if we'll put our entrance in with what's currently out there, make sure our sidewalk complies with what their ultimate condition will be and things like that. And then when they come through to actually do the work, they will adjust our entrance as needed for the widening.
So they
What
don't
we
just have
would
to tear
probably
everything
do
right back out.
with the sidewalks is either wait until NDOT acquires any additional right of way they may need in that area. And then have them build it in the new right of way area. Or sometimes what we can do is they can essentially write us a check to put in escrow and we can put it in once the entire construction is done.
Kilo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've done it both ways.
Yeah. So
and-
that way it's not built and then NDOT rips it out and moves it, because then it's at everybody's expense and nobody wants that, so.
Ultimately, when we get our DOT permit, they will let us know how they want us to operate, you know, sometimes it's put your entrance in out there, don't put the curbs in,
Mhm.
put it in later, put the money, like,
Right.
like it was said, in escrow. It all depends on how they want to operate and what their timeline is.
So is there temporary signage since people are used to be able to pulling in
So you're
to,
talking about
to the north and south right now? And since this is a right access only,
Mhm.
Yes, it will be designed right in, right out from the beginning. Yes.
So it'll
but
have
as far as special signage, because someone could still pull out and head south.
Yeah, we can add signage, you know, until, you know, the construction is complete. That's not a problem.
I just feel like that could be an issue. It's not going to be with a median.
Yeah.
Unless they
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
ramp
So
over it,
if-
which
I'm assuming you're
people
not,
do.
I get what you're saying, Jenny, in the meantime.
Yeah.
Until that median's there, so you're not planning on putting a pork chop in the
No.
middle of that driveway, it'll just be signage.
It'll just be signage just
Okay.
because,
Yeah.
you know,
With the
the
truck.
pork chop would be redundant once the median's in there.
Sure.
They probably have to rip it up anyways to widen.
Absolutely, I understand.
Do we know? I mean, I'm sure we do. I just don't remember the public hearing on that road. It's been a while.
It has.
Are they taking more from the east or west?
To be completely honest, I don't know, I need to look at the.
Or it
plans
might be a
again.
combination
Off the top of my
depending.
head.
From
I
from my
can't-
understanding, it's a
I-
combination. The existing striping is gonna be exactly where the median is. So there's striping in the right of way now that, you know, kind of has a straight median. So that's where the concrete median will be. And then in order to facilitate the extra lane, there's about an 8-foot shoulder out there now. So they'll add another, you know, 4 to 6 feet of asphalt pavement and curb to
Yeah.
create the 2 full lanes.
But yeah, off the top of my head, it's probably gonna be piecemeal up and down there, what they need to take where.
Yeah.
So even if we grant this 44-foot variance, it's still subject to NDOT permit.
And not approval,
Yeah.
in traffic.
I have a question about the traffic impact study.
Sure.
Is that merely for NDOT's approval or is that for staff approval also?
That's for us too.
So should we be hearing that portion of the variance before staff has a chance to see that traffic impact study?
Very good point.
That, or you can make a condition, you know, upon, you know, that
Review
being
against,
permitted,
yeah.
that it will have to meet that requirement of threshold to be able to support that to go to the development.
So then at the final reading,
The final,
then when that would be presented to look at to make that determination.
yes, yes, because we can take a look at that, we can have that, or we will have a January meeting. We can present that, those findings in the findings.
I can see the site more.
Yes, yeah.
Sit on my computer here.
That's okay, I just fresh off the press.
And we have Banning review those with us as well, just to make sure they meet our minimum requirements for, you know, a certain amount of access. Which again, with a use this heavy, there typically is more than enough evidence shown in those traffic studies that show that two entrances are needed.
So you mentioned as far as you're gonna have 3 entrances there with out there. And I recall we had a situation with the church north, or 67 here,
Sure.
a few months ago. There was some similarity with that. I get it that this is separate property. Without that, they don't have access. And they're saying so that we have to provide that and proceed with the venture. But there was some similarity there. I think it's 3 driveways. There are a lot of traffic for the CVS, opposed to Wawa's, and the car lot there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of coming and going.
Yeah,
With 3 that are pretty close together.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, and we probably can't do that, but does the town have any means of saying this is not a good, safe presentation on that with these 3, this close
Well-
proximity where the town can force the issue, there's gotta be a shared,
we can't
means with
force
that?
the sharing. with the other neighbors. But what this board can do is if, they would prefer, to have the site relayed out to maybe have, the driveway cut be more centralized, to maybe separate it as much as possible. If that's possible, I think that that's probably something Wawa looked at. But we also have to consider that with the median through here, currently the standard is 305 feet. When it comes to right in, right out, and that's the only thing, it's 185. So it goes down considerably, as compared to the 300 foot. I mean, I think it would be more safe, to your point, to have a centralized location, but I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not a site engineer. So if there's a traffic study that proves otherwise, that will take into consideration those stop-go movements, to show that this can be a safe right in, right out, I think we need to take that into consideration. Is it the most ideal? No. But again, I think if we can't force, that's a bad word, but force CVS and Sinclair to share, which would be 100% the most ideal. It's right in the middle. You go this way for CVS, you go straight for Wawa, you go left for Sinclair. I think we have to make do with what we have. And I know there's a cross access at State Street. But with that being the only point of ingress and egress, there might just be traffic and possibilities there with the amount of traffic a gas station typically has, where you might want a site flow that offers more than one entrance exit. Now, again, if there's an engineering term I'm missing here to be able to centralize that, maybe put it somewhere that is a little bit better, safely spaced, thinking and considering the right in, right out, which is considerably less for our standards and INDOT's. But
Yeah, if I may,
yeah,
just,
no.
so,
I would like to see the pork chop today.
Is it
And
Pork chop?
that's mainly because we're about to have an entirely new state administration. And you never know when NDOT's plans will change when you have a new governor. We were talking about a grading project on 67 to bring Madison, to bring it up to Madison at the train tracks 25 years ago. And that seemed like it was going to happen.
Okay.
Here 25 years later, it never happened. So I think a pork chop, not knowing what their actual timeline will be starting January 1st, when there's an entirely new administration at the state level, I think is a good compromise to force that to be a right in, right out until such time as NDOT actually puts the meeting in.
That's a very good point. I mean, like I said, I've only been on this project with them since 21, but it's probably moved construction dates 3 times.
we're fine with pork chop.
Yeah.
Our intentions right in, right out, doesn't impact us, it's just, we'll build it with it, or.
Yeah, I think that just helps force the traffic to be right in, right out and takes any ambiguity out of it.
Now, I do think if there is a way to move this further away from CVS, if feasible, with that consideration of, it's 185 feet, it's still 44 is what you're asking for, correct?
Yeah, let me,
Separation.
let me show you the challenge,
Okay.
that we run into here. So if you're coming in here, this allows you to pull straight through, okay, and then turn into your gas. You may turn here, but it gives you the opportunity to move through here. If I bring it in right here, everyone is turning one way or the other, and it creates a little bit of a bottleneck at the throat here. I don't have the room down here to, you see what I'm saying? So I'm only 75 feet. 170 feet of frontage. So the safest movement truly is where we have it, bringing it in straight through, because that allows traffic to move through. It's something we never touched on, but this is a two-sided building, so we're enticing people to find convenient spaces. They can enter the building in the front, they can enter the building in the back. And the plus to that is it's also two fronts, so you're getting a very good looking building on both sides. So
To that, and this may be a dumb question, which side is the front when we were talking about that parking spots in the front of the building, which
Along
is the front, along the,
67.
okay.
Yep.
I was trying to count them on my
Yeah.
screen here, which one had the parking space.
It is
Thank you.
kind of weirdly double frontaged. Yeah,
So-
it's not.
There is there's an awkward movement too, when you take into account CVS's drive-through. So this isn't the normal traffic that you would think of, just a drive aisle coming out, of course, because people are coming up, they're picking up their scripts here. They're sliding over here. If we were to enter here to turn left, I personally believe, and we certainly could have our traffic engineers talk about it in more detail, that separating that drive because of that potential conflict is safer than having those crossover. I'm all for cross access. I think it's terrific, and I wouldn't mind cross access with CVS, nor would Wawa. But I think there is an inherent conflict because of the drive-through traffic of CVS now jumping over this side. Wawa's coming in, and the Wawa traffics are all gonna make a lot. So just another consideration. We spent several months with Mr. Sinclair trying to get him to understand what we're trying to do, offering access. We actually asked Mr. Bowles to contact him directly and talk, thinking that maybe he was viewing us as, I don't know, differently. And we just weren't able to make it happen. And so we tried hard, and we kind of ran out of time on that one. So anyway, I did want to just share why moving it down, I think is less safe, honestly. And spacing's not ideal, but it's also not unheard of. I mean, you can look across the street, you have spacing that's very similar to that. I can't speak to it if it's, yeah, but I'm saying it, I don't know that that's creating constant conflicts either. So anyway.
My
just wanted-
conversations with Mr. Cooksey, also having it, if your access point was moved, shifted even in the middle or even to the farthest south, it does not give that radius turn for those trucks to be able to get in around that canopy, then turn back around up to then the north to be able to unload their tanks. So this gave a straight alignment for them to be able to come in safely, off to the side to be able to fill those tanks and then exit properly.
With these traffic flow studies that you've done be included, can you include them in your traffic study so we can just kind of see that proof in there? Another thing, and Willie, you might be able to speak to this, is that road stub you built next to O'Reilly's, was that ever planned how that was to come through the property access easement wise?
No,
Like, why did you build the stub that way? Like, was there any plan behind how that should flow?
well, the people that were in your office before you several times instructed me to build it a certain way and tear the sidewalks out. I put new sidewalks in, I put a deceleration lane coming in there.
Okay.
And it was all to match down to the specs.
Okay, but there was no kind of master plan of where that would connect, because I'm assuming it was built to connect to 67 in some way, correct? Was that the idea behind it, or was it just a stub to nothing? Okay, all right.
So,
Stub to nowhere.
so we have a 300-foot spacing requirement on a property that's only 170 feet wide.
There's also that.
So I don't know how you make any of it
So
really compliant.
in the access management ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, it says that when a site goes to plat, an access point has to be a minimum of, or the planning commission can waive at 65 feet.
No less than 65 feet.
Okay,
Yes.
so there's a caveat within the access management ordinance for platting when it goes before planning commission. If they run into something that literally cannot support some sort of compliant access, that they can waive that requirement down to 65 feet with the proof. They have to be able to know that that's the only point of access for the property.
But that won't be necessary if they have this
Very.
variance, right?
Correct.
And the distance between this proposed cut and the intersection is met. Both in full motion and right in right. out access. So that distance is 300 feet for full movement, goes down to 125 feet, then for right in, right out. 50 feet, that cut in the intersection there, the Arcuro Road.
Right.
But it is just the different distance that is not being met between that and CVS.
And I think if we look at it as well, if this was a different use, you know, if it was something less trafficy, we might not even have to worry about the cut 67. You know, it might not be appropriate because there is already that access up on State Street. But I do think with heavier uses, especially with State Street right there, because it's so short, navigating large amounts of traffic or large trucks that might service it would be really difficult to do. But also, I mean, you're gonna have this, unless you have a truck coming southbound, a northbound truck is problem. How are you expecting it to get deliveries when the median is there? Are you gonna have your trucks go up to 222 and come down because they can't come through town?
Truck running had to come off State Street.
Yeah, I believe they'd be coming off the State Street and they just make a left.
They would go left and turn in?
And turn in.
Okay.
Which, again, we've run those truck patterns as well, that there's improvement for that access.
Something else we might consider, and this is just kind of off the cuff, but if that traffic study, you know, it'll show those truck movements, there might be need for a designated left turn lane there. It's striped right now, I think, or it will be with the NDOT project. They're not putting a median there, obviously. But that might be something we need to consider so traffic can continue to flow around, whether that's a passing blister or what have you. But that might be something a traffic study also reflects. So,
Hannah, with 67, and I don't want to belabor anything, but I'm thinking of traffic flows heading south.
Mhm.
Are there any roundabouts along the way? So you're
It's a-
going in from the north, you have to, or sorry, yeah, you're making right-hand turns heading south. You're coming out until the other access, you're still really only able to head south. So I'm thinking,
There's
well, if you need to get,
You have to go.
Heading
to the States.
north.
You have to go to, take the State Street exit, get in traffic, and wait on the light there. You wanted to make a different turn.
a north-south roundabout somewhere would be ideal. Typically, when you are cutting off left turn motions with a median or something of that sort.
they don't have any Michigan U's,
Or a Michigan view, boomerang, something like that.
but is there any? Oh, I love them.
I think
They
they're
just took
great.
the one
They-
out, and then.
They are, maybe,
Yeah, let's get
maybe
rid of them.
NDOT doesn't like the Michigan. As someone from Ohio, you know, we don't speak the M word in my house, but, sorry.
I'm just, that flow.
Yeah.
Because I know when I'm at CVS currently.
Yeah.
Then I do it myself,
Yeah.
because I can't turn
No,
heading north.
no, it's,
So I just go ahead
it's gonna
and then
be a
I'm going
huge-
way out of the way just to go all the way north back.
yeah, it's gonna be a large change of traffic motion.
CVS will be completely medianed in, right?
It will,
Yeah.
Their
yeah.
entrance.
To me, that's solved when you have either a Michigan U or a
Well,
roundabout.
there's an east-west roundabout and typically what I would see in construction is a northwest roundabout or a boomerang of some sort, because there has to be ample ways to turn around in both
Okay.
directions. But that just wasn't present on this project. No, I'm not an NDOT engineer, so I don't really know.
I'm not engineer either.
Well, I'm gonna back up
Okay,
to the first request.
Okay.
I think maybe, I know
Yeah,
we've been talking
that's
about
all right.
variances a lot, but
so
let's,
the condition.
let's back up to the conditional use
Sure.
request. So that used to be permitted by right, and now it's conditional. And why was that change made? Just to allow more site-specific review of each.
I believe it was put, the discussion with the steering committee in the corridor overlay and with planning commission was that, while, excuse me, these kinds of uses tend to cluster in kind of what we would define as our gateway areas. So that was something that was heavily discussed, is making sure where they go in, if and when they go in, is in an appropriate place. It looks appropriate and not kind of like what I would call your, typical gas station with 6 cuts and just a bed of concrete. Where there's kind of a little more thought behind the architecture. And so that's why I think it was brought through. And I know, being on planning commission as well, that was a concern that I was hearing should be even outside of the overlay as well.
Is there any other discussion on the conditional use request? I mean, it seems, I guess we'll discuss the findings of fact for that.
When this gets eventually split, does that go through the town's planning process?
It depends on how many it's platted into. So if it's just a split like this, it would be an ministerial plat that goes through us, and we give the petitioner or whomever a form to take to the county that says we approve of the plat. We get a copy recorded. In this case, we would also require the described access easement for the property as part of the split.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yes, it's part of it, so it's recorded and described with the survey split.
Thank you.
Just a note, there's a little leg of the proposed road that falls between the proposed lot and the existing access easement, so it just needs to be added to the second lot of there. Very minor detail. And then who are the owners of the existing easements that are cutting through the site? Are those to the benefit of the town?
I don't know if one's.
Because those need to be, I assume they'll
So,
work through
so
releasing.
the ones that are traversing the site are private. One is for CVS, one is for O'Reilly's for their stormwater discharge. So ultimately, there's I think it's a 18 or 24-inch steel pipe that goes underneath railroad tracks to continue the flow. We've had conversations with both about rerouting their storm. We have easements in the works. We really just need to move on to the actual plan development to, capture it and finalize the routing. It is funny, neither one of the easements actually encompass where the actual flows go, but that's how it goes. But we will, correct that because we plan on capturing it, piping it around from the site. So
Unless you're talking about the stub that's there, right?
Well,
Is
no,
that what you're
there was a
referencing?
storm pipe and you mentioned electric line and.
Yeah.
so that
Oh,
goes up
okay, so the utilities.
So the utility easement that goes up the west side, that's not gonna be impacted at all. There's overhead electric and I think a water line there and putting some parking, as you can see in that, but that's not anything that would impact our rights within the easement.
And then detention will be underground, is that the plan or?
Yeah, so we're still figuring out what we want to do. We do have some pockets of green space, the south west corner, that's where our ultimate outfall is in that corner anyway, so everything kind of drains there, so we can make it work with an above ground system over there. That's the goal, so we can have it be green space and planted and things like that, but we haven't got that far.
Okay.
What was your first comment? I don't think I understood. what
I
you were
just-
saying.
so-
There's a minor detail somewhere I'm missing.
Oh, so if you go to the very north, you see where they have the proposed road that connects to the existing road
This
there?
in here?
Yeah, there needs to be an easement covered.
There'll
on the
be
plat
an
for
easement
that,
across the
so-
whole thing, because
Yeah.
we'll have access north in that property, we'll have access.
All the way through,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that should be on the plat.
Yeah, there's an existing easement which they'll expand.
They'll overlap it and expand it, yeah.
The other part of that would be, and I don't know if this would be within that, I think it would be, is that parcel up there, its only access point would be through that easement that would be cut on the station.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you put a non-access easement along State Street or something. To
Good.
force them out onto the,
Yeah, well, or we could just say you're
Well,
only
that access point's
through-
actually on that property, so they already have their curb
Yeah.
cut. if you will.
Right,
So,
yeah. Okay.
any other discussion on the condition heat? I was gonna walk through the findings of fact, so we have some criteria. establishment, maintenance, operation, the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. So discussion on that point. So this is how it relates to allowing a gas station in general business. Is what we're covering right now.
In general,
Yeah.
okay.
So I mean, if you look at surrounding uses, there's other fueling stations in general business, So it's not some new or unusual use of the property. The surrounding properties are commercial. They've got a traffic study, they're coordinating with NDOT, so I think they're covering their public safety bases. Anything else on the first bullet point? Second, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted.
Yes, no feedback.
Yeah, letters were sent, there was no feedback.
Well, one property owner was present.
Yeah.
He didn't offer anything.
No objection.
Yeah.
So I don't think this conditional use will be injurious to the vicinity based on those comments. The establishment of the conditional use will not impede or substantially alter the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for the uses permitted in the district. I think this is kind of an unusual still parcel here, leftover space, and that, it seems like it's a good fit for the site.
Would agree.
The fourth one, adequate utilities, access road, drainage, and other facilities have been or will be provided. I think we've discussed that at length,
Yeah.
that they are providing sufficient access and utilities. Adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress, so designed as to minimize traffic congestion. Again, we've talked that one.
And that, will that be a condition that we see the traffic study?
Well, I think when we get
Is it all
It would
of
be
that or
probably
together?
the
Okay.
variance request for the
Sorry.
space. So we'll go through all these again for the variance request.
Okay.
Just as it's related to the use on this one.
Use.
So the final one is the conditional use will be located in a district where such use is permitted and all other requirements in the UDO that are applicable will be met. And so this is a conditional use in GB. And so I think that checks that box. So, having said all that, if there's no other discussion, I will entertain a motion to approve or deny CU 12-17-2024-01 with the adoption of the planning staff analysis and the findings of fact that we discussed.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
And motion, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, we're gonna move on to the variance request, which is V 12-17-2024-02. Is there any general discussion for the variance requests? So there's 6 total. Then they get all adopted as a single motion, right?
You can dissect each one of those out individually. If you feel that is appropriate.
And if you'll remember back to, the BP that we had on State Street at the roundabout, you can also take pieces out and do one to pass, others you can deny or continue for more information as well.
Okay. Are there any requests that are straightforward enough to include in a motion to approve? And then we can revisit the remaining as separate motion.
I think the only change I want to see is the 44-foot variance that will be, upon approval, reflected in the findings of fact from staff after they review the traffic impact study. And that the, ride in, ride out workshop will be in place.
Quick question. It sounded kind of like potentially, Mr. St. Clair was having a change of heart. Suppose he approaches you next week and says, hey, let's work something out, you know, and get a shared use or a shared use driveway that's down close to where his driveway is now, or right on top of it. What would you do? I mean, you might have to shift some things around on the plant, but would it be possible?
It wasn't that drastic, so the configuration of the parking on the southwest side would change due to the access coming in there. I will note that DOT will probably have the same question about shared access when we go get those permits, so we have to provide them proof that we aren't able to get them as well. So I think it was said before, ultimately it's their right away, so they'll have to give us approval separately from this request as well.
Yeah, and I don't know how we would incorporate that into our deliberations of vote here, but.
I'm not saying it, I'm saying I am, it's very frustrating. We spent months,
Yeah,
very polite, visited him, talked, he was in touch with someone who was supposed to advise him. Spent forever trying to reach that gentleman who refused to talk to us, went back to Mr. Sinclair and say, hey, and we tried to reach your guy. I mean, it went on and on. And we asked Willie, and perhaps maybe he sees us as, I mean, we're not exactly sleazy developers, but maybe that's what he thought we were. So we thought perhaps that Willie would have more luck with him. He talked with him. And so it's very frustrating. There's a lot of expense and not, and then at a time, I think, I mean, how is this done without us losing time? You know, so we had to reach a point where, you know, made all the sense in the world at one time, like, and that's what we were really trying to express. It wasn't any really in it for us.
I mean, the only thing he really said was he was concerned about the traffic because he watched, you know, people stopping to get into CVS and was kind of imagining, I think, you know, what a cluster it might be to have two driveways, you know, within 100 feet of each other. Right there, at a big intersection of a major highway or a arterial road.
I completely agree, and I would second that, I also had some chats with Mr. Sinclair just about what that might look like as well. And I think it also, I don't know, I didn't really have a site plan at that point because I didn't know kind of where you guys were, but he did call the town kind of inquiring about what that means, what it looks like. And, you know, I kind of reflected the same thing, that we really highly encourage that on these heavy use corridors. It would give him, again, access to have some sort of left turn motion at the northern point of your property. Eventually when, you know, NDOT puts that median in, and that could be highly beneficial given that there will be no left access at all when NDOT puts that median in. If and when they put the median
I
in.
didn't,
So, you know, I would reflect also that, you know, it seemed like a lot of effort was made to do that. And that would be the most ideal that we would like to see, but I also understand we have to respect the developer's timeline as well, with input of funds and engineering and time into a project.
I did not get the feel, I mean, he did not state, oh, that makes sense now, I would be willing. I did not hear anything like.
Maybe
that.
through his broker, I was kind of sensitive, but yeah.
Well, and
I think.
I feel like his representation, I don't know if it was council, personally, I can't remember. I feel like he was just fielding questions,
Yeah.
but I never got that sense that they were on board
Sure.
and they left without
I talked to
any
his
kind of, I
realtor as
guess,
well.
exit information for us. They just
I
said,
spoke to his realtor as well, not too long ago, just about, what this site would kind of look like. And they asked about, the shared access, but, it was a very open-ended conversation. There was no kind of real implications made
mhm.
with the realtors.
And I think with the fact that Mr. Williams brought up about that, we need to do some research with CVS and whether or not there was a required cross access. Maybe it can be a condition that should the opportunity arise, that a shared access or a cross access can be achieved, then that can be right, pursued then by the developer,
And that would,
one way or the other.
yeah.
Make
And
that
I would
decision.
see that as, because of the way CVS is set up right now, it could redevelop, but if there was a way to close that access point and hook into, Wawa's driveway, maybe if and when CVS ever develops, something that maybe doesn't have a drive-through, because to their point, trying to share an access there, so much oncoming. You're waiting to turn left and causing a bottleneck on the 67. So I understand that at this point, but it truly could work out where that becomes more of the central, driveway.
Mhm.
But again, that's all parties have to play ball on that one. We can only really do that, like we can certainly make that the case with the other lot that gets cut out. With like, for example, our 12-acre hotel lot that we have over behind Starbucks. Cross access easements are plenty, were part of the primary plat on that, So we made it inherent from day one that that's how it would go, so. But this is an older lot, it's a weird shaped lot. And there's a lot of constraints with existing infrastructure, driveway cuts and indoor.
And I will add that, if, Mr. Sinclair didn't drag us, we probably wouldn't be here, because we would have submitted pre-overlay, so. Which would be permanent use and not needed use, so, we've been, again, working with them for a long time, and as you can see, it's pretty bush-washy, so.
So let's step through each of the 6
Yeah.
variances. So the most. The one that causes the most heartburn, I think, is the 44 feet. So I'm gonna save it. for the-
Number one on the.
I'm gonna save it for the end. So the
Okay.
first one is this maximum front yard setback of 210 feet. And so, based on what we heard and looking at the site, basically the site pinches down as it approaches 67. So I don't know that there's really a practical way to put the building in the front. And it makes it more dangerous for pedestrians. And so, I think that request makes sense. And so for that request, we'll go through the criteria. And so the first one is public health, safety and welfare. So, the layout with the building central to the site, away from the frontage, it appears to make it better flow for pedestrians. And so I think that makes it kind of fit in the criteria for number 1. The second one is conditional use not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property. I don't think it has any placement of that building really doesn't have any impact on the vicinity. Establishment of the conditional, oh wait, no, I don't know. Sorry.
Strict application.
Yeah. Strict application of the terms of the ordinance will result in practical difficulties. So yeah, since this property only has 170 feet of frontage, requiring the building to be within 40 feet of that right-of-way line makes a very small, narrow area where you can actually put the building. And so I think due to the particular configuration of this parcel, it's necessary to have the building set farther back. The variance granted is minimum necessary. They've got this site engineered pretty tight. I don't know that there's really any way to bring the building any further forward, so it appears to be the minimum need. And then the variance granted does not correct a hardship caused by a former or current owner of the property. Yeah, there's nothing out there now, so it's not anything that is existing. So, I think we meet all 5 criteria for this variance request. So we'll just step through the remaining and go through each of those 5 points. The second one, location of fuel pumps and parking in the front of the building compared to the side rear. I think this just ties into the first one. Having the building in the back and the pumps in the front. The criteria that we discussed for the first variance request are basically the same as they are for this one. So is there any other discussion on the second request? Is everybody good with that?
I agree with that.
The third one is 18 spaces compared to 11. That calculation seems kind of arbitrary. I don't know, this doesn't always fit every site the same.
Right.
And so, having some additional spaces. So that 50% is the minimum required and you take half and that's what's allowed. It's not half of what is proposed.
That is correct.
So, I think having 18 versus 11 really doesn't, have an effect on, a detrimental effect on public health, safety, or general welfare. The additional spaces will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property. It will not impede normal and orderly development of the property. Sorry, I'm off the page. The strict application of the terms of the ordinance will result in practical difficulties. So if they just had 11 spaces in front of the building, we basically have just empty unused space, essentially. And the 18 spaces requested is the minimum necessary. And then again, the fifth point does not correct a hardship. So I think we're meeting all criteria for that variance request. The fourth one, proposed driveway, I'm gonna skip that one, we'll come back to it. The fifth one is minimum landscape buffer at approximately 10 feet, so this is north of the underground storage tanks. There is landscaping there and a 10-foot buffer. So I think, permitting a reduction to 10 feet just in that one isolated area, seems like a reasonable request. Reducing it from 15 to 10 will not be injurious to public health, safety, and general welfare. They're still providing a buffer to CVS, so it won't affect the use and value of adjacent property. With the tightness of the site, I think the strict application of the terms of the ordinance, makes it difficult to have the proper drive aisle through the site. Requesting 15 to 10 is the minimum needed to make the site work. And then it does not correct a hardship caused by a former or current owner.
It's undeveloped.
Yeah. We'll move on to the last request. So this is the full waiver of foundation plantings. So these are only required on the front of the building, is that correct? And so I know there was some talk about the planter boxes. It looked like the site plan did have some planter boxes up there. How does the planting count in those boxes compare to what would be required in a bed?
Not had that before, but
No,
we did have, no one's utilized that. It's more of a spacing of 12 every,
Every
we
12
can maybe provide the count that is equivalent within,
Maybe.
every 12 feet, but within the boxes, or if it could be as best as possible or to an extent possible, I don't.
As long as we have that as a condition, can we also, as part of that condition, just allow them as staff during their site review?
Yeah, site plan review.
Yeah. Because planners take up space
Space.
as well,
Yeah, they
so I
So if
think
we
it would be hard to
put it.
have
exact
that,
number.
yeah.
Have an exact number.
So the request is for full waiver of foundation, so we'll grant the request for full waiver of foundation plantings. With the condition that the petitioner works with staff to coordinate the location of planter boxes that provide similar landscaping value. Now you want to put that.
Yeah.
Does the
Does that
town
sound
enforce
okay?
as far as?
Yeah, I think we need 8 shrubs, which, again, we'll have 8
Okay,
small, flowering shrubs or whatever in there, at a minimum.
okay.
A question on the planter box, because you have to water those.
Mhm.
They're
Sometimes,
irrigated. It's
the
tied to the
town's-
irrigation system.
Oh, they're irrigated.
Irrigated and then drained underneath. Again, it just, like the request says, it just elevates them so rodents and
Very
pests
good.
can't get in through cracks in the foundation.
Yeah, I think if they're in planters, it kind of meets.
They're irrigated.
It does. Yeah.
I could look
Yeah.
at-
All right, so we'll step through the criteria. So, the intent of the planter boxes is to provide better public health by getting that stuff up off the ground. Use and value will not be affected. I think they probably will be better maintained. They're irrigated.
irrigated.
Strict application of the terms of the ordinance will result in practical difficulties. Requiring a 6-foot planter box along the entire frontage of the building. Causes these potential health problems. Granted, the variance granted is the minimum necessary. And so if you want to eliminate the rodent issue, you basically have to remove it all. So that's,
Well, they're
that's
removing,
kind of the
yeah,
minimum,
they're removing it all that touches the building.
yeah. And then the 5th one, does not correct a hardship. So that is the first 5 of the 6 variances. So on that last one we just discussed, we're gonna add that condition that they work with staff to provide a similar number of plantings in planter box. And so really the last one is this proposed driveway access point at approximately 44 feet compared to the 300-foot standard. So I guess my question is, the other variance request that was up on 67 was mentioned. How does this compare to that request? Yes.
Church.
That's a
Sure,
good
sure.
question. So I would say that this being a different use is kind of the biggest part of that. I would also say that because they do have an existing access on State Street, which again, I think if there was something less traffic heavy here, we would make them utilize that. But with the caveat that it's right now only, it requires less spacing. So while this is technically 300 feet right now, the fact that they're building it as a RIRO and it's going to be for NDOT's project, I think it's a different kind of way to look at it. And again, with the traffic study showing that if flow would be considerably improved through this site as well as on State Street and 67. I find this to be a pretty starkly different site.
So would you add that there's no current access and really no ability for shared versus the other already had shared in place at a higher speed zone
Yeah, there's that,
compared to
yeah.
the lower speed zone?
I don't know what the speed limit is through here.
Oh.
It's 40 here and it's 45, but they usually. go
45, but it
55 if they
changes
stay-
to,
yeah.
it changes very
Right.
quickly to full 55.
And that's part of our discussion as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. The church wanted us just to infer that it was gonna be better. They didn't provide any sort of
Documentation.
documentation.
I just wanted to make sure we.
Yeah.
looked
Yeah,
at-
no, it's a very good point. It's a good question. I mean, like, again, if this was a lower use type of site, preferably, it would just be access on State Street. There's full movement there. You know, something low use, Monday through Friday office use with 5 employees, or a typical little retail shop, something that's not got a lot of traffic. But what I also don't know on this site, is how this access, and what I had asked Mr. Bowles earlier, was how this access was to be planned, what it was to be used for, if it was ever meant, with prior administration, with their idea that it would come down to 67 eventually. I could certainly see it as some sort of small through road also through access. To get from one point to the other. Whether or not that NDOT project had reached anybody's ears at that point, and that was maybe some motivation behind it. Or that wasn't even a thought, but, that's, looking at that just as a planner, if I were to see someone put in that stub to nowhere, I would assume it would come down to 67 to provide some sort of access. But again, at that point in time, who knows, and who knows what the access management standards were at that point. But I think again, a really big kind of caveat on this side is that that is going to be right in.
So I think we've just, so this,
Can I,
Oh, go ahead,
one
yeah.
thing, or the thing for the church, discussion, with that existing shared drive already in place by allowing it to then close one potentially and then move it up, that's going away from what our desired standards are. Where so those standards and that desire was already met, established, and then also too, further moving to the north was gonna put us out of more compliance with our standards because of the intersection that was built. Here in this situation, there's already existing businesses already on the bordering property line that shared access can't be achieved. So we're trying to then accommodate as best as possible, which the access management control ordinance does allow as long as it's supported by the traffic study. And the fact that this is going to be, we anticipate much higher level of volume constantly throughout the week. Where it was very isolated and limited to just about an hour span on a Sunday morning for the church. And they had adequate existing access to the road already.
Also think about if this was parceled up this way and only this site was right here and that property was owned by somebody else. The yellow parcel, the only point of access, unless that, future development, as we'll call it right now, was willing to, and that driveway wasn't there, was willing to have cross access, they could say no. Even if it was a low impact use, so we would have to allow access somewhere. Or, again, if Sinclair or CBS could work with just that green, kind of gross project site that was its own parcel. We'd have to have access. So it is I'm glad you brought it up and I think it's good to discuss it, but I think we see this as quite a different site, and use.
I think we've got a couple conditions on this request, so already spoke about the pork chop right in, right out as part of the plan. And what was the other element?
The findings of fact will reflect that the staff saw the traffic impact study and finds that it meets the requirements for secondary access.
And were we gonna state anything just on temporary signage during the?
I think the pork chop will take care of that.
It should be. I mean, there's one, I think, the Speedway on 67 right there at 9 has pork chop.
It's pretty drivable
Okay,
though.
yeah.
Probably needs to be.
Well, it
standard
has been
curve.
run over a little bit, but we can work to make sure
Yeah, well,
that it
that's
stays painted
probably
and stays
the
raised,
safest
doesn't get chewed up as best as possible.
Yeah,
It's easy to put up a do not enter sign.
in the pork chop, yeah.
It's not a big deal. So it's.
Okay.
So-
Whatever you guys want. I'm saying that's not a big.
So we'll go through the criteria based on this request, adding on our additional requirements. So the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community, so we're requiring right in, right out, and relying on the engineered traffic study and the staff review of that incorporated into the request to make sure that this entrance is safe and for the public. The use and value of the adjacent area will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So I guess, is there any discussion on if this, putting these entrances close together would have an impact on the adjacent property.
No, since they're right in, right on.
Yeah,
I think you could have I think it'd be a benefit too, because if the only entrance was off State Street, that's gonna make it getting into CVS and O'Reilly that much harder. I mean, it's gonna back up traffic even more. Having a second way in and out, I think actually will make traffic flow better, and I'm hoping that's what the traffic impact.
Yeah.
the strict application of the terms of the ordinance will result in practical difficulties in use of the property. So the ordinance says 300 feet. The property is 165 or 70 feet wide, so yes, the strict application makes it impossible
Yeah.
to have an entrance. The variance granted is the minimum necessary, so based on the site engineering, that's where the entrance needs to be, and so that's the request, so that is the minimum. And then the variance granted does not correct a hardship. Discussed that prior, that it's undeveloped, so. So there's a lot in this motion. Is there any other discussion from the board on this variance request?
I don't have anything as long as we've noted the conditions.
Mr. Chair, Board, if I may, just so there's no confusion, I realize this is my first meeting here. As attorney for the BZA, but the staff report laid it out in bullet points, 6
Uh-huh.
bullet points. I would suggest, because there's been at least 2 discussions with 2 of the points on additional conditions, you treat each one of them separately.
Okay,
And that way, in the findings, we can reflect it more.
so adopt each one as a separate motion, okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. No discussion, did you
That's what I was gonna
split it
ask
up?
if we could split it up.
Yeah, that's fine, yep. All right, we'll start with the first one.
Can you say aye?
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny the variance request 1, which is a maximum front yard setback of approximately 210 feet compared to the maximum 40 feet.
The motion to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for the first variance request. Is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the second variance request, I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny location of fuel pumps and parking lot in front of building compared to side rear of primary building. I guess I should preface that with these motions, we're adopting the staff's report and the findings of fact that we discussed for each of them. Is that?
Yeah, I think you're making a motion to approve the variance on it, and then
It incorporates all of our discussion, okay. All right, so, do we have a motion to approve or deny the second request?
I make a motion to approve as discussed.
Okay, do we have a second?
I
I'll
second.
second that.
Motion and a second, is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Third request, I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny 18 proposed front parking spaces compared to 11 spaces.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The fourth request. I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny the proposed driveway access point spacing at approximately 44 feet compared to the 300-foot standard. With the requirement that there's a right in, right out pork chop. That's constructed. And that these findings of fact reflect the staff review and concurrence with the traffic study.
I make a motion to approve as stated.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The fifth, request is I will entertain a motion to approve or deny the minimum landscape buffer at approximately 10 feet for the isolated, which is isolated to the area north of the concrete vent pad compared to the 15-foot standard.
Motion to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
I second.
Motion and second, is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, the final sixth variance request. I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny the full waiver of foundation plantings compared to the minimum ratio of plant material every 12 lineal feet of building located within 10 feet from the building facade and in planting beds at least 6 feet in width, with the requirement that there are planting boxes provided which provide substantially similar landscaping material per staff's review. We have a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Can I add to that?
Sure, yeah.
Irrigation, I think you mentioned would be provided.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with the addition of the irrigation requirement. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
6.
Yeah, that's fine.
We really appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We just try to be very thorough.
No, we appreciate it.
So no new business, right?
That's
it. That's the final item.
5 or 6
All right.
more.
That was the end.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.